Hi, I'm Maggie,
Hi, I'm Grace, and this is.
a very bookish podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to a Very Bookish podcast. Yes, it has been a while, but it's totally fine because we have a special guest with us today. We have Miss Ghana Simone. Hello, hello. How are
Hello.
you? How are you?
I'm good.
And it's been such a great time to do this because you have all of these things going on and you have so much on your plate. But I'm so glad that you were able to squeeze us in
Of
and
course. No, I mean, for something like this, I'm always like, yes, I'll do it. I like saying yes because it gives me a chance to get to know different bloggers and podcasters better, more than just kind of like a fleeting kind of like, oh, let's post something. And to actually talk to people a lot better for me. Like, I'm just like, well, at least my personality can shine as opposed to just like, here's this post and off I go. So I always love doing these.
yeah, it's so awesome. So for all of our listeners who may or may not have heard of you, would you like to give them just a little brief background on you and maybe some of your works that maybe we have heard of, maybe that they would like to check out?
Sure. As you guys said, I'm Nana Malone. Hi guys. I write sexy feel good romance. I've written a lot of royals, a lot of bodyguard romances. I have a new kind of like secret government organization kind of romance. So I'm calling it my Black Girl Alias. So if you loved Alias, this is your jam. If you loved the Femme Nikita, the real La Femme Nikita, the Canadian Peter Wilson version, not that nonsense CW nonsense that they put out a few years ago, then you will love The King, which releases on, or depending on when this airs, releases on July 19th. And it's the start of a new series. So I'm super excited where I'm just like really leaning into my love of suspense and fun and danger. I always like to say I write right in that Pierce Brosnan Bond space where it's fun. It's not gritty, but things still blow up and people like almost die. There's always a car chase, but at least there's actually romance where the people end up together and it's like a real love connection.
Yes, that's my favorite part because I am obsessed with Alias. I have rewatched that so many times. And
Girl.
when I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, she wrote this for me because this is exactly what I'm looking for. I literally tell everybody that every time I'm like looking for like a new read, I'm like, yes, I want hot and sexy, but I want danger. I want I want like a mission. I want things to happen. I want espionage, but I want it so intense and hot and sexy as well. And it's so hard to find a good version of that because most of like the other romances that you find like like in small stores and like like Walmart or like those bookstores, they have like the small Harley Quinn like romances of like police officers and Navy SEALs, but
it lacks the although I will tell you one author you need to check out because every time I read her, I'm like, I have no business writing this. I'm going to stop. It's Juno Rushton, and I recommend her book, Every Last Breath, to anyone who loves suspense. It was exquisite and the full like definition of how it should be done because it was the perfect blend of 50-50. I find that a lot of like romantic suspense authors, like they like sometimes some people really do like the sex, but like they just kind of shy away and maybe don't know how. And so then it's like, yes, we're on a mission, which I love a mission. Give me a mission. Give me some danger bang, but also bang. And what I find is that it's lopsided. And sometimes it can be lopsided the other way, and I'm like, I just like, and it's funny, my daughter, she was reading a book and she's starting to read romance now. I haven't really let her read mine yet, but I've been like finding my friends that are tamer and pulling them off the shelf. And so I gave her one and she was like, Mommy, but there wasn't even a car chase or like a kidnapping. Like no kidnapping. Why can't you add a kidnapping? She's like, not even a dragon. And she was just like, oh. And I was like, oh my God, that's true facts.
Yeah.
The apple does not fall far from the tree.
The DNA test is in and she's mine, apparently.
Yeah.
And but I'm always looking for that kind of like balance. And usually it's like I can get the hit for the suspense, but like I won't get the hit for the romance. Or if it's like really sexy romance, then I'm not getting as much of a hit for the suspense.
Yeah.
And then, but Juno Rushton was chef's kiss. She was every last breath. It's a series of 3. But it was outstanding. And I immediately felt bad about myself. Like I needed to stop. I was like, I'll just.
You're just like, I can never reach that. But it's always like fine to like mix the two and then find a way that works where like the romance is not like hindered by the action,
Yes.
or the other way around.
Yeah.
But that they just like are both simultaneously like reaching their like full potential.
Yes.
And it's so satisfying to find a book that actually does that. So I'm super excited for your book. I'm so excited. And I will be so excited for many other people who read it and who are also looking for those books that have that perfect balance, that have that, that toe curling, but still that action packed sitting on the edge of your seat. Because it's like, we like kidnapping, okay?
And it's funny because I'm always like a little light kidnapping. I mean, it's not like dark kidnapping where he like holds you and now you're gonna fall in love with him, because I'm like, that's Stockholm syndrome, you guys. Although people are like, dark romance is having such like a renaissance right now. But I don't write that, and that's not necessarily my jam, but I know a lot of people do. But like when I say kidnapping, I'm like, usually someone's getting kidnapped, and like if it's the girl, she saves herself. Like the guy's on his way. He's like, no, go rescue her, and he's got this like big plan of just like killing everybody. And usually she's like, meets him outside the building, like, what are you doing? I'm already out, like that sort of vibe. Like, I'm like, yes.
You're a couple of minutes late, like,
right? I'm like, it's like, bro. And he's like, and then he sees like the whole like battalion he brought, and she's like, a little excessive. I got out. Like that sort of feeling where it's funny and fun. And she's not chained in a basement somewhere.
Yeah,
that's not me. But like, I mean, so that's why I would say a little light kidnapping. People always escape.
People escape. It's totally fine. Yeah, fine. People save themselves. We're totally there.
Yeah, I actually looked up Every Last Breath, which is the Final Hour series, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh. So another book to add to my TBR. The cover?
I mean, seriously, no, but start it immediately. No, I don't even know Juno Rushton. Do you know the number of times I have like pimped out this book? I don't even know her personally. I just want her to be my best friend, but she like doesn't call me, and she just acts like she doesn't know me because she doesn't. But listen, I pimped out this book so hard. It is so unbelievably sexy. Like it's just, and you can tell she has experience. Like, I don't know I think she works for the government in some kind of way, but like she clearly understands the mechanics of a fight scene. Like that's a chick who has been trained in martial arts at some point. And it shows in the scenes, and it's like, it's viscerally real. And so like I said, it was so unbelievably sexy, because usually you're just like, it's like sexual tension, but like you're like, oh, it's still not juicy sexy, where you're like, oh my, is this when they bang? Like, I mean, so it's outstanding. It's so good.
That's awesome. So speaking about like experience, you have this super long and deep backlist. Talking about like how you first got into publishing and how you first got into writing, like talk about that journey. How did it start for you?
Well, it started way back when, in the Paleolithic era of romance. I've been reading romance since I was 13, and before that, I was reading anything I can get my hands on. Literally anything. I mean, I think I was the only 9-year-old with her own Agatha Christie, full volume edition, with the tiny print that you couldn't really see. And I loved to read. And, it was really when I was working in New York at this god awful place. Like I was like a what was it, like a publicity like account coordinator. I was really bad at my job. Let me just be really clear. I was terrible. I was really bad. The only thing I liked about it was the writing, obviously, and then the crisis management aspect. But I hated schmoozing. All the things that you have to do to be in like publicity. I just, public relations, I loathed the pitching. I loathed the schmoozing. It was terrible. So anyway, it was in New York, and it was the summer Bridget Jones's Diary came out. And every time I would get on the train or the bus, everybody, and literally everybody was reading this book. You would see the white cover and the eyes. And I was like, what is this book? And so I was working in Uptown New York on Lexington, and there was a Borders, rest in peace Borders, over there. And I walked in, and like when you walked in, it was, you know how you see all the displays of the books at the front of the store. Now, as a reader, you don't know that that's a paid placement. You just walk in and think, oh, that's the most popular thing. They've made it easy to find. No, it's paid placement. So I walked in, I'm like, oh, and so then I was reading, you know, I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, this sounds like me and my friends, this, you know, this like non-melanated British woman, like just her humor was so self-deprecating, and just like that interaction, I was like, oh my God. And then that really started me deep into chick lit and all of those, you know, like Jane Green, like I read every single book. But you know, what was highlighted to me was that even though these books were set in London, London has never been so white. Like, I mean, honestly, ever. Like, holy whiteness, holy whitewash. And I was like, there's no Asian folks? Not one. In London? How?
Yeah.
No, where's the Jamaicans at? I was like, I have been to London many times. This is not accurate. And and as I was reading the book, I was like, I can do this. And before, I'd never really put together that I could write before, but I was like, if this is what writing is, I got this. And I think I was just really responding to voice, because in my head, writing was something else. And so, you know, that like, as soon as I finished the book, I think it was like the next day after I got it, I pulled out my laptop and I started writing my first book. I knew nothing about conflict, motivation, and goal. I knew nothing. I just started I was like, I'm going to be rich. But, you know, I did make a mission statement for myself that I wanted my books to be highly marketable, front of store types of books, but that featured more women of color. Like, I was like, yeah, we can't just, this is ridiculous. And so that was my, you know, my mission statement to myself and what I really wanted to do. And, you know, it took me a while to finish that first book, 8 years to be exact. I mean, it was shocking how slow that was. But, you know, I went to grad school in there, I moved to Ghana, I did all kinds of things. And when I was back in the States, and I had this job that it was, you know, I really did not love it. And I was a project manager at this company, and my husband just looked at me and he was like, shit, or get off the pot. You've been talking about writing forever. He's like, you went to grad school, you moved, you had several jobs. He's like, you've always been kind of like tinkering at this book, and it's the only thing that seems to make you happy. So finish it. And I just, you know, I was kind of in my corner like, how dare you talk to me like that? I can't believe you said that. I'll show you. And I finished. And then, you know, I had a couple agents interested in it. But, you know, they were being very kind, because they did not tell me how bad it was. It was god awful. Like, I was like, I sent this out to people to read every now and again, because he bound it for me. It was great, so that I could like read it and like highlight things I wanted to add or change. And every now and again, I'll crack it open and be like, why? Oh God. And I'm just like, I sent that to people. I got a lot of rejections. But over the course of the time that I was finally finishing and writing, I was taking a lot of classes. I joined RWA. I had learned what conflict, motivation, and goal were. And my next book took 6 months to write. And that was the first one I sold, Game Set Match.
Okay. So Hubby Malone was like the one that really set you off and was just like, no, you're doing this. You got to.
Yeah. I mean, he's the one with unflinching faith. When sometimes he should flinch, I'm like, listen, all the faith you have, I don't, this feels misplaced. but he always has it. And so yeah, and so that's really how the journey started. And then Game Set Match, and then really that was like right around the time the Kindle had just started to come out. And I got my first check for my royalty statement for Game Set Match, and I was convinced that I was going to be rich. Never mind that the cover was terrible. I mean, and like, especially then as a debut, you get no say on your covers.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, no, it's gonna be great. You can still see it on Goodreads. It's awful. It's the purple and green one in case you want to go look. It's really bad.
Pull it up real quick.
Yeah, no, it's so bad. And like, I was just like, what? Okay, I don't think my publisher liked me very much, but that's besides the point. I got my first royalty check and it was like $57, and I was like, that's missing several zeros. What?
You're like, guys, this is wrong.
So wrong. And I had a really great mentor at the time. She's still a good friend, Misty Evans, and we met in one of the RWA online groups, and she was like, that's nice. Now write another one. Write another one. And she was really pushing. I had another book that was like, I was doing a call for a publisher. They were looking for like a paranormal story. And at the time, y'all remember Heroes? That show was on NBC.
I really watched that one too.
Me too, girl. I watched Heroes. And so they were asking for paranormal, and instead of paranormal, I gave them something Heroes-esque. And that was, they said no, which was shocking.
What?
Shocking. They said no, and I was like, I can't believe it. But Misty really encouraged me. So she's like, just put it up, on KDP and just see what happens, So I had to like scramble for an editor and all that kind of stuff. But when I put it up, I was like, I made $57 within an hour, and I was like, oh, okay, I see. So that was really like my first step into indie. And I'm still sold some books to publishers, but like I'm primarily indie. I'm just gonna say that I like the control. I'm a dom. I just really like when someone tells me what to do, the way that I start to twitch a little bit, and I'm like, what? It's really hard. I'm like, did you just tell me what to? Whew. The thing is, if I really respect someone and I think they're doing great and they are like, hey, I have a suggestion, I really do listen. But if someone's just like, no, you're doing this wrong, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I really like lock into did you just, So indie's really great for me, and it's been great for my career. And 109 books. I'm on the 109th now. Later.
I know.
So thank you for fielding.
I took a look at your. We were like,
through.
We were like, holy shit. We were like, shit, there's so many here. We were like, oh, let's read a couple. And then we looked and we were like,
there's a lot to do.
There's like, I went to your website and they're by like trope, and there's like 3 scrolls of trope. And I'm like, she's really done it all. She's really done it all.
Well, the good news is the website does help. So if you're like enemies to lovers, you just click it and it's just like, there you go.
Right there. Yeah.
I read a lot of enemies to lovers, but like it helped. Like I love the new website because like I would get people ask me all the time. They're like, well, which book of yours has this and this and this? And I was like, you want me to list them all out?
There's a
bruh. Listen, I don't have time to reply to this email, let alone make you a dedicated list. And so like really the search by trope just made it a lot easier for readers. I'm like, just go there. You can find what you like. Like if you're like billionaires are my thing, awesome. I have billionaires. If you tell me royals are your thing, awesome. I have royals. If you tell me, I even have some family saga stuff in there, great. There you go. But yeah, it's a lot. But I usually tell people if they're new to me, I'm like, start at Cheeky Royal and Cheeky King. And then I do a very good job in the back of the book of just like leading you where you're supposed to go. Read all the way to the end. Just keep going. It's several books deep. Just keep going.
Keep going.
You'll get to the end. And then when you finish that, go back to the beginning. Game Set Match.
And so your first one that you published took about 6 months. How long does it take you to push out a book now?
It depends. Generally on length. Like, I mean, I can go faster than I am right now. I'm trying to get more balance in my life. So usually in about 3 months, I'll have a book ready. Maybe 2.5. And I can go faster than that. And I'll be editing one while I'm writing one, for example. So I can switch off those kinds of days. But in the back in the day, the years I was writing 10 books a year, I mean, it was like I could write, 60 to 70,000 in 2 to 3 weeks, and then do a revision round for myself in about a week and a half, and then my editor would take about a 10-day turnaround time. And we would do
Grace and I are literally speechless.
We're like, wow, that's really, really fast.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas, so like I don't have that problem. Like, I don't know what I'm writing. That's been good. And especially in the early days, I had like a million ideas, and I was like, oh, and then what would happen if this? And so that made plotting really easy. But now that it's so funny. I was having this conversation with Sierra Simone. It's one of those things where it's like, when you know what you're supposed to be doing, like when you have a better idea, it takes a little of the magic sauce off, because you start like mentally editing. Like even now, like I'll get an idea, I'm like, oh my God, this idea. But my brain starts to go, really, what's the real trope? Like, how are we going to dig in and like really plant this by roots? And then you're like, oh, I don't really have one. I just really liked the idea, and you're saving yourself some like awful outlining time. Like, I outline, not everyone does. But I really need an outline. And so like now I can at least tell when I have an idea that's like not rooted, and I can just like leave that on the ideas list, because maybe it can be rooted later. My brain hasn't found a way to root it yet. But I can do that. Whereas before I would just be like, let's do them all. Yeah. Which is wild.
Do you have any advice for someone, for example, someone like me? Because like me, I'm like an idea person, because I'll be like, oh my gosh, what if this happened? And it usually starts with like a scene. And I can see it perfectly, usually like something about him, and then like something that they do, and then like a tension moment or something. And then I'm like, that would be a really great book scene. Where do I go from there? In
terms of idea, I mean, like everyone's different. So people like will get, and some people see like a movie in their head, and then all they have to do is like literally type it out. Some people, it's like they just get a snippet. Some people, it's like me, I'm like, oh, I have an idea. But the idea comes from anywhere, right? So like I need artistic input. I need to be watching things. I need to be reading things. I need to be people watching. Like I'm that creepy person at the airport, like listening to your conversations, like, and then he left her. But what I do say is, especially if you're already mid-project, because I know this happens to a lot of like newer writers, you're mid-project and it's hard, and your brain is like, bro, I've got this other idea. I say, give yourself permission to write 500 words. Just keep a file, 500 words. Go write your 500 words and then come back. Because that just really builds discipline. Because as you, like, if you decide to go trad or whatever, your book is due when it's due. No, but legitimately it's due when it's due. Even if you're indie, you're paying to hold your spot. You have people counting on you to pay them to edit. So if you don't deliver your book, that's money that your editor is out. You decide not to do the book, that's money that your cover designers, like all these things that like you have to be able to deliver. And that's one of the difficult things, I think, for new writers especially, is like really focusing in on, I'm writing this book, because you'll get great ideas, and those ideas are actually amazing. The number of great ideas that I've had, that like when I was writing, I think Royalties, I introduced these guys. I was like, yeah, she's going to work for these guys. It's going to be great. And the more I wrote about them, I was like, are these, oh God, are these, this is a whole new series. And I was like, and so, you just grab a notebook and you start, like, you just draw it, and like one of the characters just wouldn't leave me alone. And I was like, okay, fine. So I just like went and wrote 500 words, and I felt better just at least getting some of it out. Did I even use that scene? I think maybe I did. If I go back and think about it, I can go back in my notes and look. But just like releasing that pressure of your brain, like, I want to do something fun. Great, do the fun thing within reason, and then come back to the thing that you committed to finishing, is the idea that I'll give. But the other thing is, if you like, you just get like a scene snippet, I would say to really like hone in on characters and who they are. One of the things I'm sure people have seen these before, but Enneagrams, they're like another personality typing thing. And I've done several presentations on Enneagrams, but I would really suggest like hone in on who your characters are. And one cheat sheet thing I like to use is Enneagram Institute. They're fantastic because they'll tell you not only what the different types are, but like what the different types are like in relationships with other types. And it tells you your conflict right there. It's
because it's so funny you mentioned that, because we have a friend, her name is Tanya. She's baby gal, read it. And she and her friends, like she has another like reader friend, internet friends, and they started looking up Enneagrams, and then they were like, you know what, we're gonna all take the test. And she got everybody to take the test, and then she got me to take the test, and our other friend.
What's your type?
Correct me if I'm wrong, it's the number wing something, right?
Yeah, it's just, what's your primary number?
So let me look it up again. I'm a 9 wing 7.
You're a 9. It's so unusual to meet 9s.
Yeah, I'm a 9. But it gave me a 9, but then I was also, it had like 2 other ones that I could be. And I'm like, I realized that I could be those 2 other types in different situations.
Yeah.
And
but your primary kind of like where you come back to. I mean, it's anyone who knows Enneagram, I'm a 1, clearly. I don't think anyone is surprised by that at all. But I do present like a 3 or a 6. A 3 culturally, because like, you know, is like, you know, daughter of like immigrants, it's like you will be perfect and perfection. And so like a lot of that seeps into like my no, but it has to be right. And then an 8, just because I'm a hothead sometimes. And then a 6, because I'm just like, 6 is also very much like order and like things to go right. So yeah, you could see it, but primarily I'm a 1.
Yeah. So looking at it now, my primary is a 9 wing 1.
Okay.
And the other ones that I'm really, really close to being is a 6 wing 7 and a 4 wing 3.
4,
those are my other 2.
4s are also rare in the wild. 4s, 5s, and 9s, but
yeah, those are the ones that I have.
I'm always curious. So I think it's a great it's great for building characters, because it's such like a base level cheat sheet. It's like, okay, if you've got a 1 and a 7, it's like, because they're exact opposites, but when they're at their best, they come closer together and can present as the other. So then it's like, oh, this is a great partnership. And so, you know, you just kind of like, I use that all the time. I'll just be like, oh, I think they're this. And then sometimes I'll be writing and I'm like, does not feel right. And then I'm like, oh, because he's a 3. And then you fix the personality thing there. So for new writers, I'm always like, build your characters with Enneagrams. They'll just make them more rooted and solid. And then you can have more fun on top of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having their personality kind of shape what they do in certain scenes, how they react to certain things. That makes complete sense. Yeah.
So I'm guessing you're a pretty big planner. You like to plan your
what? I don't understand.
So my question is, when you're planning though, are you the type of planner to like write it out and like, because I've seen some authors like just on like Instagram and stuff, and they have like these whole like nice like sheets of like their plot they've written out, and I'm like, I mean, I have all my pens, but it's never gonna look like that. Like it's just chicken scratch. Like what's kind of your like process? I'm not
I am organized, but I'm not that kind of organized planner. I think that those planner people, like they're the ones with the washi tape, and it has to, and I'm like, oh wow. Because I think I've just learned, like my game set match, like that outline was like 60 pages. It was really just me just writing paragraphs of what it was and then building on that. So I had a book. But that was, I quickly, and I was like, that's too long. And that's too much of a drawn out process. And that I need to work faster. Another personality type thing I really love is Becca Syme's Write Better Faster. So if you do the Gallup Strength Finders, and one of my core strengths is I'm an achiever. And that means that I need to be allowed to go as fast as I want to go to like complete something, at least for me, my kind of achiever, and to be able to cross it off. And so that kind of outlining is really painful to me. I'm like, oh my God, I could have already done a quick and dirty outline by now. And so over the years, I've just learned to do a bullet outline. And then I usually I'll have their personality types before if I can like feel them a little bit, but if I can't feel them, then I'll do my bullet outline and then kind of see where we end up. And then I can feel them out a little bit more, figure out their personality types. And then I'll build on the outline, you know, like I'll do it quickly in like half a day and then I go back to it. And I'm like, oh, so what kind of connection will they have with friends? And you start to build that out. And then you're like, oh, okay, so then that's going to lead to this. And then you build that out a little bit more. And then you've got like more fleshed out embodied characters. And so usually I can outline within a week or so. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes that you will fight an outline and then you just have to call in a friend and be like, help me, which is great. But I mean, I'm a planner, but like, I'm not, everyone has a different kind of brain, but there are lots of tools now. They have that tool Plotter, which I want to love Plotter so much. I have it, I paid for it. I just, every time I get there, I'm like, oh, I just don't. And I think just my kind of, I need to do a quick and dirty plan to be able to move forward quickly. And I don't think it like is conducive for that. If someone else is using it that way to do a quick and dirty plan, great. Please let me know. I would love to use it because I'm paying for it. But it's very like, I get there and I'm like, no, I'm going to love Plotter. It's going to be great. And then I get there and I'm like, it's like with the washi tape. I'm like, no. So I'm an efficient planner. Let's say that.
You found the method that works best for you.
Yeah. It works.
I mean, you talked about how you were literally pushing out 10 books a year. What was the aftermath? Like, have you felt this burnout when it comes to writing, or are you still chugging along? And how do you deal with that burnout when it comes to writing?
I mean, I think most writers, especially after 2020, were really feeling it. I mean, I was probably on the precipice of it for a couple of years before 2020. But again, achiever personality. So like, it's like, just buckle down. Cause like, I'm not afraid of hard work. Like I am a workhorse. I will work myself into the ground, which is not a good personality trait to have. As opposed to like, I will work hard, but it's like, maybe we should be working a lot smarter. And, I was already there and then 2020 happened and it was just like, but the problem is I'm full-time. So there is no, when the depression hits and you're like, oh my God, there is no backup. Sometimes you just got to get up. And there was a book I wrote in there that I was like, that I still look back at. I'm like, it's not my best. Not my best. And then it's like really take advantage of those times that you do feel a little bit better, a little bit more positive, like not as burnt, and work, like, you know. And then when you are feeling not as great, you know, still do a little bit, because I think that the discipline of the emotions, at least for me, if you're really disciplined, I think that will work for you. Just doing a little bit every day, even if it's a sentence and you're like, I wrote today. That's a lot better than like, I didn't even write today. If you wrote a sentence, you wrote today. And I think that especially if you're like super disciplined already, if you're the kind of person who needs to be like super inspired before you can write, like I have a lot of friends who like, they just have to like feel the story. And so like a lot of them had a really hard time during the pandemic too, and are still having a hard time. I think everyone is. Mental health is just especially when you're a creative, is really difficult right now. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've all been just feeling it. So, I mean, I was definitely burnt out. But, those are things that helped me. But like, I was stuck in the house like everyone else with my kid doing school and my husband loudly in his office. So it was, oh boy. And I used to I used to be able to just go to a cafe and just vanish. So instead, during the pandemic, I was in my second office, which was actually not bad. So I was in the car and I had kind of my layout plan, you get your drink and your laptop and you're just in it, or I'd be dictating, or I would do a lot of podcasts in the car. A lot.
Yeah. I definitely get what you mean about like having that sense of like pushing out as much as you can when you're feeling that like good and that like high, because like I'm trying to be a graphic designer and there'll be times where like
no. You are a graphic designer artist. You are one. Have you seen our shop? Have you seen the things you have created? You are a designer. You are a graphic designer.
Just say, well, okay, what as it turns to therapy, what would happen if you said out loud, I am? Like, what if you just embodied it? What if you just owned it, said, I'm embodying it, as opposed to making it some future thing? Because I recognize that it makes it hard because then you could possibly fail. But the best people who are great at their craft fail fast. So fail. Everyone fails. I have failed a lot. Oh my God. Do you want to know? Should I enumerate? Because I have many failures.
Yes.
I have so many. Oh my God. That cover of Games That Match, first of all. But like, but what would like, who would die if you said I am?
No one. Okay. I guess no one.
I can't hear you.
One.
What?
No.
Weird.
I can't hear. Can you hear that?
I can't. I just.
It's like there's a mouse in here. Like
I don't know. But I mean, but like, what would happen? Like, and I say this to a lot of people who are like, I've always wanted to write. And I'm like, well, what would happen if you actually did? What would happen? Like, because when I wanted to write, and there were a lot of people lining up to tell me, oh, well, it's really hard. Like, people want to write and they just can't. And I was like, well, I'm the kind of person that when I want to do something, I do it. So I was skipping lunches with the girls. I was skipping happy hours. I wasn't going. I was sitting my ass at home, my laptop, writing a really bad story. Like, but that was my classroom. I was learning. I was writing myself into corners and being like, oh. And I was, really disciplined, but that worked for me. For some people, something else works for them. But like at the end of the day, I was like, I am a writer, and I could feel it in my soul. And I was like, no, I'm a writer. And people were like, sure you are. But then I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, like, if I said, oh, I'm trying to be a writer, will I ever be a writer? Mm-hmm. Or I just embrace it because I write every day.
Grace is annoyed with me. she's giving me the sign.
It feels good. It feels good. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so
ooh, there's nothing sexier than hearing you're right. Oh my God, this makes me so hot. Wow.
So are you gonna buy us plane tickets to sleep in your house now? So I mean, I give you compliments too.
We've given her all the compliments now. We're giving her everything.
Oh God, I love y'all. You can hang out all the time.
Okay, so I am a graphic designer and
progress.
And I'll have these bouts of like not wanting to like draw, not wanting to like do anything at all. Yeah. And then I'll have like these random spurts of like pushing out like 5 designs like a day. And I'll be like sending them to like Maggie and like to our other friends. And then it's like I'll get into like a slump of like not feeling like doing anything. And it's just like, but I created those, I at least started those 5, and I can at least go back to them and work a little bit. And it feels like now having learned like just a little bit, I can outline something today, I can add color today, And that does like help push through it, so that when like it's finally finished and it's accomplished, you know, you feel like this sense of like pride, like, yeah, I made it through. And it definitely feels good, especially in those times where you felt like you were not creating anything at all,
Yeah.
even though you wanted to, but you just couldn't. It just,
Yeah.
it feels the worst, but then through that you become like feeling like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone likes that sense of accomplishment, like a job well done. And like I said, everyone's mental health has been impacted by the last 3 years. And so like, you know, and there's people who are like, I just haven't been able to write anything. And I'm like, bro, that's okay. If you're not able to write, like, you're not able to write. That's just your brain and your body are like done, because there's like so much going on. And so like, I'm always like, take care of yourself, but if you can do a little something, because I try and like remind everyone that these are the things that feed us. Like I need, like, I was a compulsive reader. Like, I mean, I watched my kid as I'm like, okay, we're packing for Ghana. You get to bring 2 physical copies. The way she was sneaking in 7, like I wouldn't notice. And I was like, you have a Kindle. What are you doing? And she was like, but just in case. Like, we're gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, and so I was compulsive about it. And I get the same way about books. And I'm like, well, if I could just do just a little bit. And that saved me, because, you know, like the last 3 years have been really difficult all, you know, around the world. And so like, I think for anyone just like struggling, I'm just like, find the thing that feeds you and do that. And protect that as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Gosh, I'm getting all the pep talk.
I literally like, Grace sends me like these, she did like these beautiful Bridgerton of Anthony and Kate, and it's like these comic strips, and I'm like, these would look amazing as like a t-shirt or something, and she's like, no, and I'm like, we have a shot. I'm like, I would wear this loud and proud. And I'm like,
just take it and put it on Zazzle.
I gotta put on something. We'll see. It's not finished yet. It will be.
But they're amazing.
It will be.
Maybe sometimes it just takes a friend going to Zazzle and being like, well, you weren't going to finish it, so I'm wearing it as is. You're going to finish it now?
That's true. Don't do that, Maggie. Don't get ideas.
I'll send you the check in the mail. You'll just get like a random check, and you'll be like,
and I'll
what
be
is
like,
this for?
I don't know what this is for, but I'll take it.
You want to see my outfit I'm wearing today? Yeah, that's what provided you that check. But there is one topic that we must discuss.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. We definitely got to touch this one.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy, listen.
Buffy.
Okay. All right. This is where we learn about each other, really.
Okay.
Wait. For our listeners who don't know.
Who does not know?
And not know that, but all of us here, we love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And if you haven't watched that, where have you been? And
I don't even know what to say.
You need to correct that. So go watch it and then come back and listen.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So before we get into the discussion, I want to get like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, your like what made you start watching it, and like your kind of background of like growing to love it and stuff, of kind of like how you got into it.
Wow, you're making me remember further back than the Paleolithic era of romance. I'm old. I mean, I look 29.
Oh, you look 21, darling.
Look 21.
You guys lie so well. I'll see your check is coming. But I'm twice that at least. But so like I was OG Buffy. So like when it was on TV on the CW, you know, trying to like record on your TV before DVR. And so I was in college when I first watched it, really. I mean, I think it was out maybe my last year of high school. But I hadn't really paid attention until like I was in college. And then, you know, those nights when you're supposed to be like studying for OChem and you're like, I just need a break. But you know, although, you know, Joss Whedon is so problematic now, at the time, Buffy, especially because I mean, we'd all seen like it really can't be a bad movie. You know, shout out to Christy Swanson. But when Sarah Michelle Gellar, like, there was like a level of not just campy snark, but like actual, like really funny humor. Like, at the time, I really connected to that style of writing. And it was just like hyper compelling. And like the cast of characters, you were immediately sucked in and immediately cared in a way that you didn't care about the movie, in a way that the movie made you just kind of like roll your eyes and be like, this is terrible. And so I think that the writing was just, for what it was at the time, it was great. And then also that strong female character of just like, she was the one meant to save the world. There was no man around a corner, you know, to blow up, you know, several buildings and, you know, and destroy a cityscape just to like, to save whatever. And it was just her and this high school girl who had real life problems with boys, vampires, and friends, witches, and other friends, demons. And she just had like she'd problems with her parents, and it was like very normal. But she was also so incredibly strong and like totally kick-ass. And that at the time really spoke to, I think, a lot of people. And then also that love story with Angel, it was just, I think we'd seen stuff on TV of like, you know, teen love stories and stuff, but it was all kind of like, it wasn't quite intense enough. Like nothing captured that sort of like when you are like desperate to be someone with someone feeling. I don't think any television shows really up until that point had really captured that nearly as well. Like they told us that people were together, or shows would tell us that they're together or they belong together. Like, yes, Ross and Rachel, we were all, but like they were older. So in that kind of like high school space, it's like, we hadn't really had that. And so it was just really compelling to watch at the time. So for me, that was what Buffy was. And then, you know, and then Angel and a very young David Boreanaz was very nice to look at. I mean, like,
I love David so much.
And just James Masters, even, you know, as Spike the Evil Guy, was so like incredible. And you're like, he was so much older than they were too. So it was like, and he's like a grown ass adult, and he was like, I'm on this TV show, but he was as this British, and he's not even British, as this British vampire. It was like, so, like, it was just ridiculously compelling, and you couldn't stop watching. And so for me, that was the Buffy experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That show kickstarted my love for David. And like, I loved Angel to start. It was like so good. I loved the romance in there because like you said, it was something different. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. And to this day, like one of my all-time favorite shows now is Bones, which stars David. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, my romance with you started way back.
Wait, are you also watching SEAL Team? Because he looks a little different. Looks a little different. And it's like, I mean, I don't mind the eye candy, and I actually do really like shows like that, like the procedurals, and like the I do like shows like that, especially since I read a lot of suspense. So I'm like, what kind of bomb apparatus is he? Because you don't want to search that on Google, so you're like, how are you setting? Okay,
like, let's get a little more detail here in the dialogue. Let me know.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely loved him. He's just everything. So I guess that answers my question of like what team we're on.
Maggie, are you Spike?
So I'm team Buffy. I want Buffy to get with me. I want to get with Buffy. I think Buffy deserves to be like with a woman. I think these men ain't shit, and that she deserves more than them. And I think I could meet that standard.
I love it. Actually, I like being team Buffy. And actually, of all the men that they had Buffy with, I think Riley was probably the best one for her. But they neutered Riley. That actor was so cute too. Mark Lucas, I'm like, what happened to him? I was like, he's a cutie patootie. But I like being team Buffy because she sacrificed too much.
Yeah.
She sacrificed so much.
I mean,
it was all on her.
Yeah, with Angel and her relationship, that's like when it was like probably 2010, 2011 when I started getting into Buffy. So I was 11, 10. I was like 11, 12 when I was getting into Buffy. That just reveals my age. I was born in 2001, so I'm
Oh my god.
yeah. I'm a youngster. Grace, you're like 3 years older than me.
No.
4. 5?
No.
You guys, do you even understand how old I am?
No, because you look 21.
You're 21. What are you talking about? You're 21.
Yes, no, you're right.
21.
You're so right.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I loved Angel and hers romance. And it was that like dark, mysterious romance where I was just like, oh my gosh, this man. I was like, and then they didn't end up together, and I was like heartbroken. I was like, I
was so sad. I cried so hard.
Oh, I cried.
I was angry.
I cried so much. And then,
but it mimicked real life because, like, sometimes you don't get that. I mean, or you do get a soul-shattering love, and it really does shatter your soul.
Yeah.
The metaphor, guys, the metaphor. Like I said, it's a shame that he is so problematic and should never speak about women ever. But at the time, it was like he was doing something. So I used to I've loved Firefly that he did. I loved a lot of things that he did, and I was like, yeah. So I was like a Joss Whedon fan, and then you started to like unravel things, and you're like,
you're like, oh no.
No. I mean, these days that you look under a rock, and you're like,
something is always
racism.
I will say, when Spike and Buffy got together, I was excited because Spike was like my favorite side character where I was like, oh my gosh, they're in this episode. I'm so excited. But then when they got together, I was like, okay, not what I wanted. I'm here because Spike is here, but I want him to myself. So Buffy, get out of the picture.
You just want to insert yourself into the show and just have everybody.
Like, it can just be like a fork. They can all connect to me and not to each other. Like a fork? Yeah, that's 4.
I mean, James Masters, honestly, he was brilliant. He was brilliant as Spike. And I don't think he's ever been able to do anything else where people are like, oh, where people aren't like, oh, Spike.
Yeah.
You know, and just like Giles, like Anthony Stewart Head. Like, I think every time, I mean, when he rolled up in Bridgerton, I was like, Giles is here. And it's like, that man is like, I have done like 50 whole shows since Buffy.
I know. I can't get past it. That's exactly what I think every time I see him. It's so funny. It's so hilarious. But that, you just know that someone did like a really good job in that character, and they did it for such a long time that, but enough time that you just grew to love that character, and you will forever associate that face with that character.
Oh, for sure.
I definitely loved everything about that show, with like all of the different creatures and different dynamics, and then like with Willow and like her powers and everything else coming into play. It was like really,
I felt like Oz got shafted though. It was like Willow had Tara, and then I was like, cool, what are we doing with Oz though?
Where does Oz get any, that I did. I did feel that one.
That show definitely fueled my love of like vampires and that kind of like paranormal. Like, Grace knows this, I'm not a big Twilight fan.
I am.
Do you guys fight it out?
No, because I respect her love of Twilight.
Okay.
I have that, like, I hate it so much, I love it.
Disrespect of it, but it's fine.
Yeah, I hate it so much that I end up loving it, and I like hate watch it.
I love it. This is so great. You guys are like, I feel like I hate it, but I watch it, and then I just am like, oh my god, let's watch it again. Do you know what? Before Buffy, like, because I have a whole thing. I'm not gonna watch something. I'm not interested in watching something where there's no definitive way to kill some shit. Like, I just listen. I need to know that, like, are we staking them? But then you get these Twilight versions that are just sparkly and can't die, and you're like,
yeah.
And then in Blade, there you have daywalkers, and like, guys, listen, I cannot. So I generally don't watch a lot of vampires or werewolves and stuff like that, because I'm like, no, I mean, with the exception of like maybe Underworld, because it was like,
oh yeah, that was a
badass.
Oof.
Such
so
a badass.
Good.
But I'm Scott Speedman, but I was like, usually I don't watch it, but like I really enjoyed Buffy. But I think it was campy and not scary, and they were like going with, you know, established lore of, you know, just stake the vampires and they die, it's fine. But like, especially when we started getting daywalkers and Blade, I was like, I cannot, people. I was like, might not make it, but I want to know that I at least took one or two with me, and give me vampires who can't die. Come on.
Yeah.
You gotta have some way,
right?
I mean, I saw this funny, it was like this, somebody tweeted a meme, and it was like what Edward thinks he looks like out in the sun, and it's just like a picture of like this guy on fire, and then what he actually looks like, and it's just sparkly Edward, and it's like, did he really think people were gonna notice that much? And like Stephanie Meyer, problematic person as she is, the culture phenomenon that she created with Twilight and the revolution of books. Wish she was a better person, but she did something.
We hope a lot of people are better people. I think, you know, and I think that that's one of the key things that, you know, you learn once you are older and have a little perspective, is that like there are people who create art that we love and enjoy and consume, but they're not, like, just because they created some great art doesn't necessarily make them good people. Like that's just a fact, you know. Like when people are like, just like, oh my god, I love this artist so much because they're a singer, and they just, and I'm like, yeah, I know they've got some great catchy songs and stuff, but like, you know what they're doing behind closed doors? Like, I mean, you don't know them. And so I think when people, like, we can go, oh, I really like that song, and then just take a step back and go, oh, I enjoy it, sure, I'll go to a concert and have a great time, and you know, it's really fun. Like, do you know how many Justin Timberlake concerts I've been to? 5. You know, 5 concerts, and every time he opens his mouth to talk, I'm like, please don't say anything. Don't talk, because I'm still mad about Janet, you know. Like, so like, as long as you're not like, because there are people who are like, you can't say anything bad about him. I'm like, oh, why?
Yeah,
he did something shitty. As long as people can, like, you know, like, art is such like a weird thing, right? Because you could love somebody's art so much and be like the other day my daughter was like, mommy, I downloaded this book from the library, Maze Runner, and I was like, oh. I was like, the book is fine, author is not fine.
I mean, Harry Potter ingrained in our society now is Hogwarts houses. People will ask you, I'm like, I'm on dating apps, and I've had people ask me like, what's my Hogwarts house? And I'm like, it's like it's ingrained into our culture now. And it's like, that woman is a straight up LGBTQ foe. Like, she just hates like turf. I do not respect the woman one bit. Like, it's just, but
and
Harry Potter,
it's a hard thing to separate, especially when someone is actively saying something that's like really denigrating a whole group of people, like, and they're actively doing it. It's one, like, it's not one thing, but it's like when you know, like James Patterson recently said things, and you're like, and you're sitting there and you're like, you could have just stopped your thoughts and been over there, minded your business, and nobody would have had scenes to say to you. But you have to come. Don't you love how I get my Ghanaian accent quick? But you have to come and open your mouth and talk nonsense. And I'm just always like flabbergasted. And I mean, especially with J.K. Rowling. I mean, like, they did a whole ass special where she wasn't there, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. And they made a point to put the date that those things were recorded.
Yeah.
Yep. To show she is not here. She's not on this. She's not.
He's not invited her.
We're pulling from way before, from years ago. We're pulling this from years ago. Yeah. They made a point to show, like,
because I mean, it's like the problem is, like, when in the moment of like doing something new or presently doing something, and someone is like showing their whole ass. You know, like I look at the Ezra Miller situation, and I'm like, with their whole movie out, oh, okay. I just
Yeah.
I was
and
so mad.
I'm like, Ezra, where are your parents? Where are, because you know, like how we all have people, if we mess up, people just like come snatch us up, right? Ezra does not have those people. Like they
You just
don't
get pulled by the ear and slapped with a sandal. Right? That's what would happen to me. Like if I acted up one bit, my mom pulled out the belt and I was scared to do anything.
Right? It was like we all had people that like my cousin's an actor, and we were having this conversation. She's like, what in the world with Ezra Miller? And I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but this is a hot mess and they need help, but also they need to stop kidnapping people, you know? And and my cousin was like, so like, they have no one in their lives, no one to be like,
their publicist. Where's their publicist? Where is
and so
any of their people?
My cousin was like, the moment I act up, I was like, yes, I would. Your mom would call me and she'd like, go get your cousin, and then I would hunt you down and drag you kicking and screaming back to some detox spot in Ghana, and then you would emerge again and you would make your apologies and get back to work, right? But I was like, but like there are people that just have no one, or are not self-aware enough, or like are saying it with their whole chest. And that's what we have to remember, is like all these times we're like, oh, but they seem so nice. No, but
are they really?
The whole test, they were never nice.
Yeah, they were hiding it, most likely.
They were hiding it.
Yeah, but yeah,
and it's always like that. And it sucks for like the rest of like the people who get to like experience all of these, like to read the content or to read these books by these authors, or like, you know, that are excited for things, excited for the movies and things like that. And then all of this news comes out, and then you're just like, now you have taken something that I was so excited about and have like turned it into something that it's just like, well, now I have to be like, think about like who you are as a person and how much of that is who exactly you are, or is it just something that you have just been, that a thought that just came up?
It's difficult, but I always say, I'm like, Walt Disney was a notorious racist.
Yeah,
people love Disney.
Yeah,
love Disney. And I was like, so we just forgot? Cool.
And people honestly like forget that how the parks work, because I'm a huge like, I love going to Disneyland. I love it. Love it.
You're from LA. You love going to Disneyland.
I love Disneyland. I love going to like the Imagineers and like the creative process that people have there and all of these things. And then people who I talk to often, and they're just like, oh my gosh, Walt Disney and all these things. And I'm just like, yeah, but you got to remember that, you know, you got to remember the time that this started at and what people were like at that time. And he was not very different. He was not very different.
I mean,
but yes, very creative, very like, you know, had this vision.
Very talented, huge vision. Also racist. And so what? No one's going to go to Disneyland?
Yeah. I mean, even now, Pixar, they have like a gay couple kiss for like less than a second, and the whole like internet explodes. And I'm like,
yeah.
And then they remove it, and I'm like, it's Pride Month. Excuse me. Like, this is LGBTQIFOs here is what I see. So yeah. Disney is,
something's always coming up, and it's just
there's
like,
always, I mean, it's a number of times that you just have to go, wow, people are still assholes. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know, like, I mean, you see it, and we were talking about this a little bit off camera, but when we're talking about TikTok and everyone, you know, something happens, some author will, you know, show their actual real self, and then you know, people like, and I'm always like, did they say something racist? homophobic, transphobic, sexist. No? Are we really going to stop? Like, I mean, did they actually plagiarize? You know, like all the like the terrible things that people can do when they're like, I will never read their books again. We're going to burn their books. And I'm like, damn, like, I mean, can we have a nuanced conversation about like what that actually means and looks like? Because there are people that people be like, they're canceled. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? Because in 6 months, they're fine.
Oh my gosh. That's the worst part. Because like we have this huge uproar and then people forget and then they just move on.
It's not even that they forget, because sometimes people are holding on to stuff, especially with some authors now. People are like really holding on. And they're like, nah. But like those people are still fine, because so much of who reads our books and who consumes our media happens off of social media. Someone just is in the store, and maybe you're lucky enough to be, you know, recommended, and so someone buys it and they recommend it to their friend, and and so it's word of mouth, hopefully, if things go right. And so that person is still selling fine. And the world does not exist on social media. So it's just, I'm always kind of like, I take a lot of that with like a grain of salt. You know, every now and again, I'll laugh with my author friends, and I was like, you know, I just got to go on Twitter every like once a month just to make sure I wasn't.
I Twitter. I'm terrified. We've gotten like ripped on Twitter for one of our podcast episodes with a guy. Yeah. We did an episode with a guy who he started reading a book because of Book Talk
for like a book, and he decided, oh, like everybody keeps commenting about this book, so I'm gonna pick it up and read it. And he read it, and we were just like, you know what, we haven't had a guy on before, so why don't you come on? We'll talk about it. We'll talk about your experience with, you know, jumping into like this community that you had no idea about, and what were your thoughts on the book, and just, you know, from someone who was just reading it just to read it and clearly enjoyed it,
because he took notes
through the podcast
with notes.
I love it.
Like with notes. Who could recall scenes better than Maggie?
We forgot. Like it was like one of our best podcast episodes.
Not that scene, the one in this, and it was right before this, and then we're just like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. And people were just like, oh my gosh, that's so cringy, and they didn't like it, and they were just like, I can't believe it.
It was like a 10-second clip, and they were like, they're in love with him, they want to date him, stop smiling, like you don't need to laugh so much. And I'm like, y'all realize like we're on a podcast, like we want to make the guests feel good, and also like we were having a good time. We haven't talked to him since.
We're not like assholes like the rest of you guys.
Like we're not like book Twitter. It's just hello book Twitter. Like
and me, I was just like, I saw it and I was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
Whatever. Maggie got mad. But me,
I got mad.
I was just like, you know what? It is what it is.
So Gracie,
I got mad.
You are gonna be like, it is what it is. That's your personality type.
I know.
I just got mad because it's like
the most 9 thing ever. I was just like, oh.
Yeah. I just got mad because it was like they immediately went to like, oh, they're in love with him and they're like wanting to be with him and stuff. And I was like, there's like 1 or 2 people in this world that I actually want to be with right now at the moment. And I'm sorry, but he is not it. That seems a little like misogynistic, that the first thing you think of when I'm smiling and talking to a guy is that I want to be with him, and that there's no such thing as being a platonic when I'm a podcast host too. So it's like,
no,
I have more integrity.
But I think that where I have landed on a lot of this stuff, and luckily I've been able to avoid much of it, because also I'm like, I'm on deadline. Listen, I just find that people who have a lot of time to be mad about stuff on Twitter or TikTok, they're not actually writing. I said what I said. You can find me at Nana Malone Writer. I said what I said. If you have a lot of time to be on the social medias, you're not writing. That's fine. I am writing. There's a lot of people who are writing and just have work to do. So like, if that's just your only thing that you're like on socials, that's fine. But don't like, that's just what you're doing and that's your focus. But and I said it back in the Twitter days, and I was like, there are a lot of authors that I would see just in Twitter flame wars, man. And you would see them, and I was like, and it was very painful to watch. But I was like, two writers going at it, and I'm like, guys, guys, what happened to like actually having like a conversation, a nuanced conversation? Next thing, people are being blocked. And like, I'm like, guys, first of all, who's writing your books that are due? I just want to know. Want to know. I'm just going to ask that question. Cool.
Other things to worry about.
Other things to worry about. But it's just, you just go and you're like, am I canceled? What would I be canceled for? Okay, cool. And, sometimes I say things and I've had like, I haven't done it a lot lately, but I had a segment on Instagram that I would do a lot, Talk to Me Thursdays. We were also usually social justice stuff. And I would say a lot of things. And I'm like, I would give it a day and then go to Twitter just to make sure I wasn't canceled, to be like, one time someone was trying to cancel me. It did not work out in their favor. And I was like, right. Cause like most people know me as like sitting over here reading and writing. That's just doing my job.
Yeah. Being on TikTok for so long, I realized that most of those like hate commenters, or they're literally just like trolls, and they're like 13 and they're like 14. And I'm like, you aren't able to have a nuanced conversation or even like understand what's happening. So I'm not going to give it kind of what Grace said, where it's like, I'm going to let you do you. And then obviously I had to learn that, and I had to be like, okay, you can do whatever you want. It's not going to affect me because I can literally turn off my phone, but you're going to be sitting there writing about me still and being all pressed.
Yes. My Theodora Taylor says to me, I was upset about something the other day, and she was like, listen, welcome. She's like, because only famous people have haters. And I was like, you know what that is. And she's like, and then also famous people don't read their own tabloids. They have people to do that for them. So what are you doing when you're, I was like, accurate. I felt like really good about what she said. And I was like, you know what, that's true. Only famous people have haters. And I was like, but at the same time, one of the best decisions I made as an adult, not being a baby, is just going, I am not arguing with people, strangers on the internet. I'm just not. That's ridiculous. It's a waste of time. I have things to do. There are books to write. There are books to read. There's like, and there's ways to get engaged in a lot of social justice without like, I think social media has gotten us all in this position that we think we can like someone will say something inflammatory and then we think we're going to go in and like change their minds. And like, and especially if it's inflammatory, like on a comment or like another post, like I think there are ways to do that are more conducive to nuance. So I'm just like, and I'm always like, look, if you want to actually have a discourse about it, we can have a discourse. Like, I don't mind. I'm not scared. I can have a conversation. Will I change your mind? Unlikely. But am I going to be sitting here screaming back and forth on the interwebs? No, I'm a grown up. I left high school a long damn time ago, and this is ridiculous. The only difference being if someone is saying something racist or homophobic or transphobic, like, and then just being like, no, that's what you said. That's what that was. And being like, and then just like piecing out, like, but like my whole thing is if people are saying something dumb on the internet, like, I'm like, why do people get so mad when you're like, you're being racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever? But I'm like, because you are, and you are.
Yeah.
And that's why you get mad.
Don't like being called out.
But why? You said it. You said it. You know what people think that it is, and you know what it is when you say it. So just go, yeah, and move, just own it. Like, I find that would be easy. I'm like, just own it, and then I'm like, I see you, you see me seeing you, and then we move on. Like, but instead you're gonna fight with me. That's not. I'm like, but it is. Yeah. I find it fascinating. So like, I post on TikTok and then I kick because
me too.
It's getting very, that is not good for the mood. Like the endorphins kick in on every video. Like you're like, oh my god. But then eventually you're like, oh, So I had to like pull myself away. And now I barely even check.
Yeah. That's me right now. I think the last video I posted was like maybe like 3 weeks ago, and even before that it was like maybe like a month had gone by that I hadn't posted. And it's just like something that I used to be really, really excited about to post and create content, and it was so much fun to do. And then book talk became something else, and it was just like, you know what, this isn't really what I want to do anymore. And we're not here to enjoy. It's not that,
Well, yeah, like I said, everyone wants to have their lukewarm take. It's not even hot. It's lukewarm.
It's really not. And it's always like everybody trying to say something else that sounds different, but it's exactly the same thing as somebody else. And it's just like,
well, and it's also the exact same books. And I'm like, y'all, there are only 3 books out right now, and only 3 kinds of authors. Okay.
And it's always like those people are just like, and then people are always like, oh, you know, Book Talk only talks about this and talks about that. And it's just like, your For You page is also catered to you. So it also is what you are sticking around to watch. Yeah. So you're over here saying that, well, it's so hard to find books with people of color and fantasy books with so and so, and like, you know, romance books with like, you know, Hispanic characters or Black characters, or, you know, all of these things. And it's just like, well, who are you watching? Because
who do you follow?
You and I, our pages are not the same.
Not the same.
Our pages are not the same because we are looking at 2 different For You pages. Because my For You page, I could blindly scroll, pick a video, and then have like a new rack with a whole diverse casting and whatever, with disability, with
Happy Days was still on TV when I started. I have a unique understanding as a woman of color writing romance in a space where, you know, people historically don't want you. But then also how systemically Amazon does not help you. Like the moment back in the day, if you would tag your book multicultural or interracial, Amazon would then go urban lit. And that's who it would show your books to. And when you're not writing urban lit, guess what those readers don't want to read? Your fluffy romance, your fluffy billionaire romance. And so those recommendations happen a lot. And then you're like, no, but I'm being recommended with books that don't make sense. When you're like, I'm writing books like, you know, Lauren Page or like whatever, but I'm writing brown characters. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And so like, I think so whenever people give me the argument of like, well, you know, like, how do I even find? And I'm like, oh my God, my Google is broken. How shall I survive? If I went to Google and typed in, you know, like, I'm like, wow, I'm like, do you not have Google? What's that like?
Yeah.
And so I
really, age, what?
I was like, if you typed in, and they're like, but isn't it racist to type that? I'm like, no, just go and look. It won't hurt you. But I started the Brown Double Challenge to really like support authors of color writing romance who, like, I've had a lot of luck in that I've had a lot of people who like were really supportive and like helped me in the days when I was coming up. And I was like, if I can get anywhere and like stick a toe in the door and just like jam it open, I'm going to do that. And so like, that's why I started that, because people would just keep saying to me, but like, where do I even find diverse books? And I was like, you walk your happy ass fingers on over to Google and you type in diverse romance or Black romance or Latinx romance, or, I mean, like, you're going to get a whole list of people. And then people started being like, oh my God, it's on my TBR. And I was like, did you read it though? And so that's what the Brown Double Challenge was about. It was like really recommending to my readers, who obviously are going to be fine with Brown Double because they're reading me, but saying, hey, here's some other authors exactly like me, you know, who are also writing royals and bodyguards and billionaires and whatever. And being able to, like, instead of just saying it's on my TBR, actually it's a book club. Don't turn up to the chat, you haven't read the book.
Exactly.
And so that was what when I conceptualized it, I was like, so that people can stop saying that, like, but where do I find these books?
Yeah.
I literally
irritating question ever.
I literally looked up Black romance books, and there is 274,000 results. And when it pops up, I already have like 20 plus books right here. The Worst Best Man, Party of Two, a love-hate thing. Like there's so many, and I'm like, even Instagram, you could search it up probably, and there's probably a hashtag for it.
There's the hashtag.
Like, can you
so,
not
like,
research?
since you've been in like publishing for like so long, do you see like have you seen like a little shift in the time, like in this past year?
Yeah, no, in the past, I guess 3 years now that we're going to pandemic. Sure, in the past 3 years.
It's been 3 years. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's in the past 2.5, 3 years, definitely. But I think I have some concern that that window is closing again, because what's happening is publishing is like, oh my god, it has to be on TikTok. If it's not on TikTok, we don't want it. But on TikTok, the books getting recommended are overwhelmingly non-melanated authors, overwhelmingly. And so what's happening is those buying teams, they're going to forget to do that social piece work that they committed to. And they're like, well, it wasn't on TikTok, so we didn't get. And so like the number of times people have said to me, they're like, well, I've never heard of you. And I'm like, yeah, I that's fine. And they're like, but how long have you been writing? And I tell them, and they're like, how many books do you have? And I tell them, and they're like, but why haven't I heard of you? And I was like, because what you read on Amazon won't recommend my books to you. And they're like, but, and like people get so surprised. And I was like, I write too many brown girls. And so Amazon, like, is going to be like, well, this person hasn't read anything with brown girls. Like, they wouldn't like it. They wouldn't like it. And so they just never do. And so like, how are people supposed to get like big on TikTok for publishers to buy them if TikTok also pushes down the content of Black and brown creators? How? And then publishers don't see those Black and brown creators. So they're like, well, there aren't any here. Nobody's buying these books. Then they get to see that dumb shit that they used to say to me back in the day. Nobody wants to read about brown girls. I had an agent say that to me to my face one time as I was doing one of these like pitch things. And I was like, she's like, you have some talent, but can you just make everyone white? And I go back to my mission statement. And I was like, no, I can't. Sorry. And she was like, well, best of luck to you. And I will never forget that. We'll never forget it. We'll never forget it. But I'm watching it on TikTok now. I'm like, so publishers, are you going to do the right thing? The answer is no. And so I'm just really concerned about that window closing, because all the books coming out now were bought 2 years ago or whatever, right? When it was like, oh God, we have to look like we're not racist.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, and the thing is, when you acquire these books, are you going to pay? Because you should pay. You should pay the kind of pay that you pay for non-melanated authors.
Yeah, you should. And it's so like, it sucks so bad because like, when you're growing up and you're like looking for like, like all of the TV shows that we talked about, there weren't people that looked like us.
Nope.
We're not. They were all white and super...
But except Alias, though.
Oh, yeah.
Except Alias.
And like, they looked a certain way, and like, we loved these shows because of what they meant to us and what like they made us imagine and whatnot. But then how much more impactful would it have been to see us, you know? And now I feel like there's so many of us like now who are like looking for like more things just like us. We're not looking, we're trying to, well, those of us who are trying to look for books who represent the love and the romances that we want to have in our life. And it does suck because like those creators, they don't get the same love that a lot of other creators do get. And it's just it's just like, but we're trying so hard. And it's just like, in the end of the day, it feels like, what the fuck are we doing this for then? It's not going anywhere.
It does get, it's tiring. You do get tired. And at Book Bonanza, I was sitting, I had dinner with a bunch of authors of color, and we were sitting there like after all these years, we've been sitting here and been like, we got to get more authors of color invited to these events. Like, and then you look around and there are more, and we're like, yes, yes, I see us here. And then you're like, I can still count us on two hands.
Yeah.
And there's so many more. And what happens is you just get the frustrating. And like, again, I don't think that it's necessarily like a personal thing, although there's an element of that. I think that it is systemic because people read what gets recommended to them on TikTok, on Facebook, on Apple or Kindle or whatever, wherever you read books. And so whatever gets pushed out is a reflection of who you are and the choices you've made. But you have to actively make other choices. And people don't like work.
Yeah, they don't.
I said what I said. People don't like work. Work is hard. Work requires that you are uncomfortable, and people don't want to be uncomfortable. And so they're just like, oh, it's fine. I'm just blah, blah, blah. And so it's hard. It can be exhausting, but like, I mean, what's the alternative? Give up? No, it's not an option to give up. Because when I was a kid reading romance and, reading my historicals and, redhead blondes and brunettes with pink nipples and still loving, the Scottish lairds, Bonnie Last or whatever.
Sassenach.
And I romance can do a lot. I mean, look at what Bridgerton's done.
Yeah.
And yes, we have the racist haters who are like, we're just looking for authenticity. I'm like, it's romance, so it's not real. And also, there were people of color in that time. There just were. I don't know where you thought they went, but they were there.
They were there.
They were there. So you're showing yourself. But I did the Bridgerton experience with Sarah Simone in LA a few months ago. And it was such a beautiful thing, like seeing all these people, just like all walks of life, who were brought together by this, like, yes, the books were fun. They're fun for what they are, right? And Julia Quinn created this world, but I think what really the real magic is like Shondaland's also like really like filling out the world and making it extra lush with really the diversity and inclusion, and just being like, I mean, like, look, we were all sitting here like pining over Jonathan Bailey and Simone Ashley, like a dark-skinned Tamil Indian woman and a gay male. And we were like, but they just have to be together. I mean, the way we were all screaming and dying and rolling around on the floor, like, not again. I mean, it was the shenanigans that was happening all around the world of people screaming. When Simone Ashley was like, you vex me. And I was like, yeah, he does. He's terrible. Meanwhile, take off your shirt. Like, we were all feeling those feels. And like, it was just a testament to like what Shondaland can do and the experience that Shonda has. Like, taking something that's great already, we all love Bridgerton, they're what they were. But then also really just like amping that up. And of course you see the haters coming, well, the people resistant to change, I'll say. But to see what that could do, like all walks of life, everyone dressed up as like the time and in ball gowns and having a grand time, people making friends, and it's like, oh, are you in LA for this? And like, just getting to know each other, and it brought a lot of people together. And I was like, this is what it can do. So like, why are we sitting here still having this conversation about like not recommending books? Like, why are we still having that thing where Amazon's like, well, we know what you like because you've told us you only read Corinne Michaels, so we're only going to give you Corinne Michaels or anyone else like that who's white. I'm like, you're missing out on a whole bunch of other authors who write like Corinne Michaels who aren't white. You're missing out, but because they've tagged their books as African-American or whatever, they're not getting recommended. And their careers are heavily impacted. And then they don't make the money that's going to allow them to do things like the book bubs and these author swaps and all kinds of things. And so they're forever left out of the conversation of the bigger authors. So then they don't get invited to these things like the book bonanzas and the big author signings. And so it's like a systemic cycle, and we just have to keep fighting. Like, everyone's like, oh, I always feel like, oh, like maybe I'm talking about it too much. And I'm like, nope, no. Is it fixed? No. Okay, I'll just keep talking until people start like really fixing and really making change. That's how change gets effective. And there are always people, and like I said, I think that window is closing on us a little bit. But hopefully there are people in publishing who are like, I remember the first time we got canceled. Maybe we don't let ourselves get canceled again. So I hopefully that the window does not close too quickly.
I hope so too, because I got back into reading because of like COVID and like which a lot of people did, and so now I used to read back when I was like in like ninth grade, and then I stopped, and then like seeing the change of like what types of romance books were there at that time, and then like seeing the access that I have to different books right now is like so much better. But then also at the same time, it's just like I'll get these other, like you said, recommendations for books, and I'm just like, I don't want white. I don't want white. I want me. I want me in that cover. I want me in that book.
Well, I mean, and then there's the whole like alternative cover like conversation, and I'm like, y'all see how like they're quickly shot, like, because if there's no people on covers, you're never gonna have to see brown skin and be like, oh my god, it was brown. I was so traumatized and attacked. I mean, and that's essentially why I did my own covers. I was like, look, actually no, it was my publicist who was like, we need to put Black girls back on these covers. I used to do it all the time, but it did impact my sales, at least at that time. And after I had a set of duets, and my publicist was like, no, it's time to go back. And I couldn't, no photographer had a model, not a dark skinned model that they could find a ball gown and shoot them in. They just like, oh, I just don't have any of those models. They don't sell. And so Nina was like, you just got to do your own covers. And I was like, what do you mean? Who does that? Apparently I do. The answer is not to solve my own problem by doing that. Like, that's not the answer. The answer is have more models available. And to make that normal, and to like make seeing brown skin on covers a normal thing. But now with the alternate covers, you don't have to, and people aren't made to feel uncomfortable. So it all spirals into like several levels of conversation, but
it does, because like, and then like there's that whole thing of like the cartoon covers, and then like some of the cartoon covers do allow for like some books that are more culturally based, like a lot of Desi books get to show that little bit of their culture in the covers, and they're absolutely beautiful. And it's catering to that cartoon animated cover, and yet we still struggle to push those because people rather go for like the ones with like the white couples on the front, and it's just like, come on guys, it's right there, it's the same thing.
You're not gonna die.
It's not, the water is not that cold. It's actually pretty warm and comfortable, and you'll enjoy it.
I mean, like I say it, I used to say this when I did the Talk to Me Thursday a lot. I was like, look, there's work to be done, and we call that eating your vegetables. There are books to be read, and you're going to feel some way, or you should if you're a decent human being. I know a lot of people don't feel anything, so I don't know what that says about you, but I'm not judging, but I am. That's my resting judgment base. But romance, that's cake. Vitamin enriched cake. It's cake. So like people who are like, oh, I've never read a book by someone who, it's gonna be brown nipples. Like it's vitamin enriched cake. You're fine. It's cake. It's cake. You're gonna eat it. You're gonna feel good.
Enjoy it.
Hopefully the sex is gonna be hot. If it's not, oh, I'm so sorry. Picked the wrong one. But I mean, it's vitamin enriched cake, and to get people to eat cake is like the most difficult thing in the world. They're like, well, it's just, I mean, I just couldn't identify with it. I can identify with aliens though.
Oh
yeah, we can all tell I'm like the shade of like a wall I'm literally like matching my wall, but I grew up in Texas, but and I had to learn about those systematic things that happen. But even now I'm like, where people are like, I don't identify with this, or like some creators will say that, and I'm like, you can't identify with the human being, but you can like identify with like a 7-foot blue alien with like an a foot long dick, and like you can identify with that, but you
Oh
can't
yeah.
identify with the human. Like,
Yeah.
something's a little sussy about your subconscious there, and I definitely see it in creators too. And I'm just like, yeah, no, not interested. Not interested in you.
Yeah. And they say it with their whole chest.
They
And then they get
their
mad.
whole chest.
Whole chest all out, titties all out, saying it. And you're like, did you? And you're like, I'm so confused. Wow. Like I've had people say that when they're like, when they're even speaking positively about me and like the brown nipple challenge, and then they'll say that, and they're like, well, you know, I usually can't identify with like, you know, like books with like Black women, but you know, this book was great. And I'm like, did you just out loud?
So you just backhanded me and just expect me to take it. Cool.
It's like, no, listen, I hit back. I mean, I'm like, if you say something crazy, like you'll get talked about on Talk to Me Thursday. Yeah. That's just, I mean, I probably won't name names because I'm a lady, but it's going to be real obvious who I'm talking about when I say it. But like people will say that with their whole chest, just, and they're like, I really love paranormal. And she's like, well, and they're like, yeah, I know. And then they'll be talking about some contemporary book, and then you're like, great. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I just couldn't like really identify with this character. The number of times I see that in a review, and I'm like, or when they're like, I just couldn't, it just didn't seem believable that like a Black woman would marry a billionaire, or like a Black woman would be like a princess. I don't know, it just doesn't seem. And I'm like, first of all, nobody wants a billionaire. Do you know what billionaires look like?
You want a millionaire.
Yeah, they don't look like this. I'm so sorry. They do not.
They don't.
They don't.
It's so sad because
it's so sad. That's not what billionaires look like.
They don't.
First of all, if you want reality, okay.
Also, if you want something realistic, don't read romance books, because I'm telling you, it's a story. It's
fantasy. Like, that's the whole point. Is you're being sold a fantasy, and that's what you're supposed to like. The fantasy is what we all live for, and real life, like everyone's, you know, I'm always joking, and I'm like, and they're like, oh, they're like more billionaires, and I was like, look, I can get average any day I leave my house. I can get catcalled by average listen, I don't even have to try real. I can go out there with no shoes on. Catcalled right now by average. What I want to write average for.
Exactly. And it's so crazy to me because like I grew up in LA. I grew up in South Central LA. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's just like every time I would pick up a book and read it, I would be like, there is no way that all of these characters that we have interacted with are white. You're telling me there's not like one Hispanic, there's not one Black person, there's not one Asian person, there's not one South Indian person. Like, where we?
That's what I'm saying. When I read that Helen Fielding book, I was like, no, this is great, but have you been to London?
Yeah, like where is this? Because I
need to never go there.
Granted, there's places like that. There's places where they're like it's white everywhere, and then it's just like one person of color in that town.
My high school, when I went to Colorado high school, there were 2 Black people in the entire high school. Yeah, like it was white as could be. Yeah.
And
I've been to that high school.
I'm so glad I never had to do that because I have grown up in like, you know, Los Angeles is one of like the most like ethnically diverse places ever, because like people would be like, oh yeah, you live in LA, but then they think like, oh, they think of the stereotypical LA with like the Hollywood and all of that. But then if you really look at it, people who are actually from LA, they're just like, okay, well, what part? Because you can grow up and like within 5 miles of each other and have a completely different view of who other people are, and yet we all live there together, and we know what it's like to have so many different people ethnically around, that seeing a world where it's just white people is so bizarre to us.
Bizarre.
It's so weird.
It's
and
very
so for me, it's just like when I read these books, I'm just like, no, that person's not white to me. That person is.
Well, I did start seeing some creators be like, I just make everybody black in these books when I read them.
Yep, that's what I do. I be doing that so much.
I was like,
so funny.
But I mean, but I was like, no. How about we just challenge people to?
Oh my gosh, it was so funny.
Do better. Because what I don't want is when white non-melanated readers pick up a book by someone who's melanated and they're like, well, I just make everyone white in my head. No, you're gonna see these brown nipples and be all right. Yeah. Brown titties, because they're not pink. That would be very weird. Like, listen, it would be very strange. You would be like, that does not look right.
That's like some photoshopping right there. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Not how it works.
And that's so, the male perspective. That's what a man would imagine. That's exactly what a guy would think. He's like, yeah, pink nipples. Everybody has pink nipples. Like, that's exactly what a man would think.
You clearly haven't seen that many, have you? Yeah, you really haven't. Cool.
And the thing is, always dark when he sees them. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I never see the lights in a row. Yeah, because she did not want to see you. For sure, she did not want to see you. She made sure those lights turned off as soon as you walked into the door because she did not want to look at you.
So. It was 2 a.m. and last call. She's like, oh,
God,
like, whatever. I'll just turn off the lights. It's fine.
Turn on music. Turn off the lights.
Don't do it. It's never that bad.
Well, I think this is a good stopping point. So I hope everybody who's been listening has been enjoying us talk, because we love chatting with authors. I'm having fun. Like,
this is great. Where are our drinks? We need some
we need something. We need a little sipper. Okay.
I literally could go on forever, but it's almost 11 p.m. where I am.
Oh, so, true.
Yeah. I'm 2 hours behind y'all. So I work. I do the podcast in Pacific Standard Time, but I live in Central Time, so I have to.
It's late for you.
Yeah. It's late for me, and I wake up at 4 a.m. every day, so it definitely.
No.
Yeah.
That's
I wake up early every day, but thank you to everybody who has been listening. Make sure you go and check out all of her books. We will have everything linked down below. At least I'll try to get everything. Depends on when I get everything up. It will get up. It just might not get up when the episode is up, but I have like a week, so I will get it up. I've said up like 5 times.
Mostly just focus on the King. This bad.
Yes, which comes
focus
out
on that one.
It will already be out.
Looks amazing. I kept looking at it. I was just like, oh my god.
His jaw. I'm just like, I just want to like grab it and just.
Yeah. Now Angela Comber, again, she makes these cups. She's amazing. And I don't have, I had some for a signing, but I don't have any more of the alternate cover here in my office where I show you, but you can check out the alternate cover too. It's on Amazon. It's so
everybody
great.
Don't worry, we'll link the Amazon links right there for you guys. Make sure you guys check her out. Nana Malone. It has been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So much fun. We probably could go on for a couple more hours.
We probably could.
And to our listeners, don't forget, we also have a couple new designs up on our Etsy shop. So we have our More Books design. We have our Reader's Beach design. And then we also have our Westport, Washington design, which if you're going to a Polycon, Tessa Bailey is going to be there. So if you want to get a shirt for her to sign, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it might be too late because it's Saturday and literally it starts on Thursday.
We're gonna be there, so it's okay.
So,
you'll get it after.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. And I'll do better at pushing out more designs because I am a graphic designer.
You are a graphic designer. Thank you, everybody. And next week's guest, I'm just going to say it now because Anna Huang is coming back on. So we're doing our year later. We had her on a year ago now, which seems crazy, right before Twisted Games release. And so now it's going to be a year later, and we're going to reflect on the last year. And so make sure you stay tuned for that episode. That's going to be a good one. And we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone. Bye.